Well, I think another spirit of the World War II generation is with us today, and that's the gremlins. So if you young people don't know about the gremlins, we'll tell you about that later. But, thank you very much, Admiral Walker. Amazing to have your insights and recollections on that world-changing event. So we've heard about the events of 76 years ago from an eyewitness. Now we're going to take a look at the current state of the most notable reminder of that event, the battleship Arizona, and the efforts to preserve and document that treasure to our nation. So we are very proud to welcome today Mr. Pete Kelsey, who has over 20 impressive years of experience in the creation and application of technical solutions through innovation and storytelling. Please join me in welcoming Pete Kelsey.
Gremlin free. One, tick, 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 tick. All right, I'm going to use this one. I tend to dance when I present, move around a lot, so I'll try not to trip over anything. Thank you all for coming today, because there's nothing I love more than sharing the highlight of my career, which has been this project. A couple of disclaimers. I am not a historian, nor am I an underwater archaeologist. So my other favorite thing about this project is I'm always learning something, like I just did from the Admiral. There's so much to the story of the Arizona and to Pearl Harbor on December 7th, and I'm a sponge. So by the way, if I get something wrong, don't hesitate to raise your hand and correct me. What I am is a technologist. I'm a veteran, and I'm a proud resident of the state of Arizona for 30 years. So everything about this project, it just fit me to a T. So let's get started. So the project, the genesis of the project was from the National Park Service, who you probably know, it's the Arizona, and the memorial is on an active military base, but it is managed by the National Park Service. It is the #1 tourist destination in Hawaii. 1.7 million people a year go out to the memorial, about 7,000 people a day. And so this very special place is under the care of the Park Service. So they came to me, at the time I was working for a company called Autodesk, and said, I'm paraphrasing wildly, no one has really done a comprehensive survey of the ship and of the memorial, the building itself, since the early 80s, so well over 30 years. Could you help us with that? And I jumped out of my skin. Of course I can. I'm not quite sure how, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. You know, what an amazing opportunity. So really what it was about, what the Park Service was interested in initially, was basically change detection, right? Because it's a really dynamic environment. You've got a steel battleship that's 100 years old now, by the way. Keel was laid in 16, commissioned in 17, I think I got that right. That's been underwater for 76 years. So she's not even the same ship she was 2 years ago, much less 10 years ago. So the idea was to try to establish a baseline data set that future surveys could be measured against. And I love that, because that to me, as a budding historian, sounded like, wow, that's my kind of legacy. I want to be involved. So change specific to corrosion, coral growth. So you're going to see some imagery and footage that the ship is very much alive. There's coral everywhere and sponge and all kinds of stuff. And of course, she's got a lot of oil in her still. She was fully armed, fully fueled on the morning of December 7th. A lot of that burned and was, lost as part of the explosion, but estimates are up to 500,000 gallons of oil are still on the ship. The second phase of the project, which happened quite accidentally, and frankly, this is where it got even better than I could have imagined, was this idea of virtualization, meaning the short version of this is we started asking ourselves the question, how could we repurpose all this data, which you're about to see, because it's 3D, it looks like you're there. This image, by the way, is a rendering of the survey we did. That's the Arizona, accurate to a centimeter in the water, rendered in the computer. So how else could we repurpose that kind of information? Access, the Park Service, this is their charter, right? Access, wow, for all the people who can't physically come to Pearl Harbor, why don't we virtualize the park and create some kind of an experience? And of course, which touches on education and outreach, which of course, this is a monument, the museum here is a monument to, these stories must go on. They have to. It's our history, our heritage. So that's kind of the backdrop of how this whole thing got started. This is probably my favorite image. I always start with it because I'll bet a lot of you have been out to the memorial. Just I'm curious, how many? Yeah. And right on the best day, when you go out there and you look over the railing, you see some stuff, but it's hard to tell what you're looking at. And the rangers are great, and they'll say, oh, that's the galley, and you can see some of the stoves, but it's kind of a challenge even on the best day, because the visibility in the water on the best day is 12 feet. Normally it's 6. It's murky and gloomy and difficult. I love this image because, wow, there is a 608-foot battleship under your feet with 900 guys who never got out. Very special place. So I love the context that this image provides. This is a very proud ship, state-of-the-art at the time. This image, maybe it's well known to some of you. I only stumbled across this one on the internet a couple of months ago, and I showed it to one of the 5 survivors, Don Stratton, who you'll hear more about shortly, and he said, oh, that's Seattle. That's where I boarded the Arizona in 1940. I was like, wow. I love that kind of human connection. And of course, December 7th, a 2,000-pound high-altitude bomb from 10,000 feet pierces the deck forward right by turret 2, goes through about 4 or 5 decks, and lights off the forward magazine, which is 1 million pounds of ammunition. This is a catastrophic explosion that the survivors, Lou Conter said, it lifted the ship 30 feet out of the water, and then she came back down. She sank in 9 minutes and burned for 3.5 days. Pretty great, or pretty stark image of that fire. And this is what was left. I believe this is dated, wow, this is 3 days. So this is when the fire finally went out. This is December 10th, and gives you an idea of what was left of the Arizona. The fire was so, well, the entire bow was destroyed. And of course, everybody in the forward part of the ship was killed instantly. And you can see the foremast has collapsed due to the heat that actually caused structural failure in a lot of the interior parts of this ship, so the mast actually collapsed forward. And I'm going to walk over and point out a site. It's right here. It's the port gun director, Admiral Cox, mentioned this. That's where Don Stratton and the 5 other guys were. That's where Don Stratton and the 5 other survivors that the Admiral mentioned were, that Joe George on the Vestral tied up next door, threw them a line, and they were able to get off the ship. But it's just, when I saw that, and Don was like, that's where I was. Wow. Now, soon after the salvage begins, because to the Admiral's point, we're at war. Blackout conditions, salvage everything you can. Every weapon, every searchlight, every piece of steel, everything. We need it all. Plus, we also have to clear the channel. We have to make Pearl Harbor operational again, et cetera, et cetera. So what was saved from the ship was, and the superstructure was basically cut off. So all of that stuff above water, the mass and all of that was removed, and is actually, a big pile of it is still in Pearl Harbor in an area I could never describe, because there were gates and guards and then more gates and another guard, and a lot of hazardous materials and EOD type signage all over the place. But a large part of the Arizona wreckage that was taken off is there. It was another, unique experience for me throughout the project to be able to go out there and see it and have Don with me and watch Don walk up and touch his ship. It was just fabulous. I mentioned the survey, the last survey in the 80s. This was the result, which is a 2-dimensional, hand-drawn rendering of what the dive team saw. So how do you create this in the 80s? Grease pencils, measuring tapes, and about 50 divers who are down in the water taking notes, measuring, bringing it up to the surface, transposing it all, putting it in the hands of incredibly talented people. And 3 years later, this was the result. And it's uncanny how accurate this is, because we compared this to our super high-tech survey in 2014, and I got to tell the guy who managed this survey in the 80s, I met him in Seattle, and I said, your work is stunning, because it overlays almost perfectly with what we did this year. So, pretty amazing. Side view of the same thing, of the survey from the 80s. And then we get to, again, kind of the honor of my whole life is I'm a diver. I didn't mention that. It's the other reason that this fit me to a T. And I was granted access to get into the water at this very special place, which is just astonishing. And I'd like to show you some footage. So this is the floor of the galley. And the tiles are just, wow, they look like they're new. And this, I almost drowned right here. This is a bomb hole in the deck of the Arizona. I put my hand in it, and I couldn't believe it. I was seeing, for those of you who are divers, a tank's supposed to last you about 45 minutes to an hour. My tank was gone in 15 minutes, because I just couldn't believe where I was and what I was doing. Moving along, most of the Arizona is in very shallow water. 2/3 of the ship is in 18 inches of water or less. The deepest part is up in the bow where the damage is. Turret 1 and the 3 14-inch guns are still there. Another rookie mistake. I wasn't wearing gloves and shredded my hands, because everything's sharp and stings you and stabs you, but I didn't care. It was just remarkable. So after I had my tour, as it were, to get acquainted with what's down there, then the task became, how in the world are we going to do this? And it was all about a team. And one of my favorite parts of this project is every single person we asked, can you help? Will you help? They said yes, and when do you want us there? And we'll do it pro bono. And that's moving tons of gear from the States out to Honolulu. I mean, it was just remarkable. So it was a real thrill to be part of such a dedicated crew who showed up en masse with every piece of kit known to man. And I see one of my project members in the back. That's Commander T.J. Neal. I'm going to never miss an opportunity to embarrass a friend. See those fabulous plaid shorts? That's TJ. So again, the Park Service, with this access and permission and tons of safety briefings, you know, we deployed a couple of kinds of sonar. Well, again, I'm a technical guy, so forgive me if somebody kicked me if I go too far over the technical edge. Two, actually three, now that I think about it, that diver portable sonar there that the diver's using, the special operations guys use that for navigating in zero visibility at night and whatnot, and it's basically got an iPad in front of them that shows the diver where they are with real-time sonar data in front of them. So we use that. We used multi-beam side-scan sonar off a Boston whaler for what I'll call the deeper parts of the sonar, the deeper parts of the study. The water depth at the Arizona is about 35 to 40 feet. So we used the whaler and the multi-beam to go around the perimeter of the ship and then over the parts of the bow that were deep enough that the whaler, the prop, et cetera, would not touch the ship because we could not do that for obvious reasons. Well, then the challenge was, well, what about the shallow water? A robot boat. Sorry, the vendor would be cringing. It's a USV, an unmanned surface vehicle. And because this thing only drafts about 3 inches, so it was perfect. A lot of technical difficulties, but it worked. And I'll show you, so this is just a video. We were out there on, with so much gear trying to stay out of the rain, and you just mow the lawn. This is multi-beam sonar, so the vessel just goes back and forth. Back and forth. You can see the oil in the water, and the visibility is, you know, as tough as I mentioned. Then we get to the Lidar. Now, if you've never heard of Lidar, that's laser scanning, okay? It's just technology that sends a pulse of laser out millions of times a second, gets a good point, and you get a really tight, very accurate XYZ coordinate of millions and millions of points. And that's me out, I'm the guy in the orange there, out on barbette number 3, doing the terrestrial part of the scanning of the building and the parts of the ship that are above the water. But we also found a laser scanner that worked underwater, which blew my mind. This is a company out of Denver who their equipment is designed for oil and gas work at great depth. So this thing's case is rated to something like 3,000 meters. Unbelievable. It weighed 300 pounds. And again, if you're a diver, moving a 300-pound cannon basically around underwater was really challenging. But it worked really well. And I'll show you, here's some footage of the laser actually working. That's probably tough in the back, but you see a little green laser beam flickering. We're back in the stern there. That's some of the open hatches, just in back of turret 4. And then some of the resulting data of what that scanner produced. Because it's laser-based, this was the most accurate stuff we got. This is within millimeters. It's so accurate. Some of it's a little fuzzy because if you think about, again, it's a dynamic environment. There's tide and current and swell, and so all that sea life is sort of going back and forth, and the laser hates motion. So some of it's a little fuzzy, but most of it was really came out well. Photogrammetry. This is a technology that's not new. It's about 30 years old, but in a nutshell, anyone with any camera can take a series of pictures of anything and create a 3D model from those photos. I got curious back in 2011 with some colleagues if this would work with my dive camera. We did some testing in the Florida Keys. We did some testing in a colleague's swimming pool, and it worked. So we brought it to the Arizona. I'll show you some of the results. There's a cooking pot artifact on the deck of the Arizona. Swam around it, took a whole bunch of pictures, and got this model. And then we 3D printed it. Isn't that cool? I'll pass this around because I want you can touch it. It's 1/3 scale. And how great is this, right? To be able to go from the physical to the digital back to the physical. Because we can't put you in the water. We can't let you touch, these artifacts, but now you kind of can. We thought it was great. And so a lot of interesting possibilities for a museum like this, right? Wow, I have a camera. Could I do that? Yes, you could. This was a great day. This is Don Stratton, one of the survivors of the Arizona. And this is in Honolulu up in the Park Service office. And that's my laptop. And I had been showing him all this techno babble, and he wasn't getting it. And, silly me, he was 92 at the time. And I'm just thinking, I'm, in a way, a little bit panicked because I have his attention. But when I put that in his hands, he welled up. There were about 25 people in the room, cameras rolling. I mean, we all just lost it. It was so powerful because, he got to touch and have that experience. It was just magic. It really was. Well, then we scaled up. Wow, this photogrammetry stuff works. What else could we do? Well, this is a coral encrusted vent that's about, 8 or 10 feet in diameter. It's right by turret 3. You can actually see it from the memorial that we modeled. And what was interesting about this one is about 3 months after we were done, I got a call from my friend with the Park Service in Honolulu, and he said, please tell me you still have that model of the vent. And I said, of course I do. And he said, good, because we just had a collapse. We just had a big hunk of the coral fall away. And we're going to go out and model it. Can we compare the before to the after? And I said, absolutely. So we did that. And I'll show you a sort of a larger scale version of that very process in a moment. Another great day at the office, scaling up photogrammetry even more. Drone-based photogrammetry is all the rage. Send up a $1,500 drone, take a bunch of pictures, and you get a 3D model. Tons of applications for that. Well, don't even mention the word drone on an active military facility. Forget it. So we shanghaied a Coast Guard helicopter, of course with permission and whatnot, but, I had another really fun day. Colleague and I went up and orbited the memorial, took a ton of pictures, a lot of video footage, knowing that, see all that glare on the water? It's very common. Technically, that's a challenge for photogrammetry. It doesn't like sparkle or shine or glare, but it's not bad. This is the model. There's some funny business in it, especially with the water, but some of it is exceptionally good. And this is 2013. The technology now is that much better. So That's a bit about photogrammetry, whether it's underwater or large-scale terrestrial. Here's the sonar data. So here's the Arizona. Centimeter accuracy, more or less, in 3D, all the raw data. You'll see a big black spot come up, which is where we lost GPS coverage. When the little robot boat goes under the memorial, goes under the building, you lose GPS. But these guys, this is why you partner with very smart people. They figured it out, how to use, I won't even try to, they figured it out. They fixed it, and we got all that data. Then I got curious, and I said, well, I can put in some realistic water. I can put in a diver for scale. And this is where the virtualization portion of the project just sort of blew up in the best way. The Park Service, oh my gosh, let's virtualize the park. This is fabulous. You're allowing people to see things that aren't visible, whether it's underwater, above water, etc. So this is a combination of the Lidar, the laser scanning of the building, of the memorial, and the sonar. To scale, geo-referenced, and accurate to about a centimeter. Well, the scientists were very patiently, the archaeologists were very patiently waiting for, well, where's the science? It took a while, but here it is. So we surveyed the ship again last year, and this is the software aligning the 2014 data with the 2016 data. You set a couple of settings, say everything above, I don't know, 2 millimeters and change, color it blue, and this is in real time. You just gotta wait for it. There we go. So we knew there had been change where that little coral collapse had been, and I can't run over there, but it's right sort of in back of barbette number 3 there. And this is where it got really interesting to the really smart people. Wow, this is change detection so I can now monitor the Arizona and compare survey to survey to survey and quantify the change that's going on the ship. And then the gloves came off, so I turned all the really smart people loose. They started, a colleague of mine started thinking, well, what about a model of the actual ship as designed? Okay, let's go find the blueprints. Park Service had them. So he set to work building an as-designed model of the Arizona, which you see a bit of here. As this thing spins around, you'll see that's what the three-dimensional model looks like. And of course, then the questions really start coming. Well, wow, what could we do? We have the Arizona as she was before December 7th, and we have her as she is. Let's overlay the two. And the first time I saw this, the amount of damage in the bow, I mean, there it is. It's sort of like, holy moly, you know, are there any questions? That's, the bow was completely destroyed, and about 25 feet of it in the Z, in the elevation, is gone. I mean, I'll give you an idea. That river is about 25 feet. Here's another look at it. Same data, just presented a different way with different colors, as she was, as she is. Well, we printed the cooking pot. Let's print the ship. So we found a vendor in Utah who's, yeah, we can do that. How big do you want it? I said, well, how big can we afford? And at the time, this was the 3D printer with the largest printer bed, which could handle an 18-inch Do I have that right? 18-inch print. So we printed it in 2 halves. And you all walked by the print when you came in. That's the 3D print that's right on the other side of this case right here. Take a look at it. And what's really fun is when you get down and you look at it and you see that 25-foot difference, you see the damage from the explosion. It's pretty profound. There's a lot of interesting things about that print. You'll see, actually, this is the second half, so when it's printed, then they remove all the material that it's sort of printed inside. It's this really sort of mad scientist process that I don't really understand, but he's not painting it, he's actually removing the material that's left over during the printing process, and of course that's the bow, and then there's a stern half, and then they just fit together. And again, pretty darn accurate. And then I'll show it to anybody who wants to see it. So I was thrilled to be able to bring it here and to show it to you all. There's a couple of interesting spots on the print. You'll notice on either side of the ship, because a lot of people say, well, where's the memorial? Where does the building straddle the ship? And when you look at the print, there's 2 silt mounds directly across from one another, which shows you right where the pilings that hold up the memorial are. And then the spookiest part, or maybe the most emotional part, that surprised us all, is in turret 4 in the stern. If you look down in there on the print, you can see a crack. And that's where they inter the crew members who choose to be buried with their shipmates. All the urns are in there, and they just buried they buried another guy yesterday, and that's where they all are. And the Park Service had never seen that before, so it was really kind of moving. Well, the last part, how could I forget? So I had the honor of being invited to the survivors' private function at the 75th anniversary last year. And I got to present each one of them with a small 3D print of their ship. Yeah, I well up thinking about it because it was so powerful. And that's my friend Lou Conter and his family, and he's amazing. If you get a chance, he's 96, sharp as a tack, was on the quarterdeck when the Arizona exploded, was part of the salvage, body retrieval, became an aviator, went on to do all kinds of top secret stuff that became the SEER school. He was the first SEER officer, DFC, just amazing, amazing guy. And gave one to Don and his wife, that's Don Stratton. And it's just a really, really powerful day. And for me, frankly, as kind of a geek, I'm the technical guy who attempted to figure some of this out. This brought the project to a whole new light. It was emotional, it was physical, it was really, really something. And then we decided to run with that. So the first thing I should do is, nobody looks good in virtual reality goggles. Nobody. There's nothing cool about being in them except being in them. And I'll explain what I mean. So this is Dr. Dave Conlon, who's chief archaeologist with the National Park Service Submerged Resource Center. And we were in Honolulu, and I said, Dave, you have got to see this. You've got more dives on the Arizona than you and your team than anybody else. If you say this is great, then I'm going to feel great. He thought it was really, really something. So I have this virtual reality over on the other side. If you didn't fill out a ticket, because it's lottery based, fill one out, grab one of the museum people, because I would love to show it to you. You can dive the ship. You can walk her decks as she was, while at sea. You hear the ocean, and you're in it. You can go up on the mast. It's really, really something. And I'll give you a little teaser as I close. So this is a sneak peek of the virtual reality, except of course this is two-dimensional. Little bit of what we put together. And you know, the good folks at Autodesk, if you're not aware, every special effect you've ever seen in any movie is done with Autodesk software. So that's why this looks so good. And if you'd like to get in there and swim with the fish and hear the bubbles and look up and look down and look all around, and you're not troubled by vertigo, or you're not afraid of heights, that kind of thing, it would be my pleasure to show it to you. It's just that it's because it takes a couple of minutes per person. We're going to do it on a lottery system. So as I say, it'd be a thrill for me to show you and to get you as close as you will ever be able to get in the water on the Arizona or to Walker decks prior to December 7th. So with that, oh gosh, I put Lou in the goggles and showed him his ship for the first time in 76 years, a couple of weeks ago on Veterans Day, and he coined me. So I took that as a survivor's seal of approval. It meant the world to me. So Lou says it's good, Park Service says it's good. If you've got some time and you win the lottery, I would love to show it to you. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, or there's a lot of very smart people in the room who I bet can if I can't. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Where you were showing us the blue, that was a 4-year difference. Have you been able to synthesize and project backwards to how much has she deteriorated from day one over the whole 76 years?
That was a great question. I'll repeat it for those of you who didn't hear it. Could we turn the clock back? So I overlaid the 2016 survey with the 2014. The question was, could we turn the clock back to December 8th, 1941, that kind of thing? It's possible. We just have to have the data. In that case, we would need, I have to think about this, we would need not the as-built, but the as-is condition of the ship, if that makes sense, which we don't have, but we could compare the as-constructed to the survey data, and then if we had the metallurgical corrosional data, and then through time at that, it's possible. It's possible. Maybe the scientists would go, it's possible, but not useful.
There might be, United States, I'm guessing, the Arizona went through Northland shipyard in the 30s, so there might be that probably then surely digital plans.
Right. That's right, the torpedo blister, and again, I'm out of my depth, but right. So it's a good catch. So maybe, I'd love to take that on, actually. Any other questions?
My question is, have they learned anything new about the app itself and the service? Like probably forensic evidence?
I'm trying to think if I remember any of that. Have we learned anything new? I can't think of anything specifically. I think it's more, I think I mentioned this, it had to do with being able to put the whole ship in context, right? Because when you're in the water, 6 feet of visibility, you can't tell, it all looks the same unless you're up on the guns. But when you have this data, you can tell where you are. So the damage in the bow, holy moly. The physics of that explosion are now really well understood and have now been sort of proven out that it exploded here. The weakest structural parts were forward, so it all went forward and, up and out, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Are there any plans to scan the interior of Arizona?
Are there any plans to scan the interior? Did anybody happen to see a PBS special last fall called Into the Arizona? No. Okay. So the short answer to your question, sir, is we hope. The trick is that no one goes into the Arizona. It's a war grave, it's hallowed ground, and it is exceptionally dangerous because underwater, 76 years, everything's weak, we don't know what's strong, we don't know what'll support weight, you bump into something, you get tangled up. Anyway, so as part of that PBS special, the Park Service and Woods Hole built an ROV and sent it into the ship. I should point that out. So when you look at the 3D print in the very stern, the very pointy back end of the ship, where the crane was to recover the float planes and put them back on the catapults, they removed the crane and removed the deck plates to get into the ship. That's where the ROV was sent into officers' country and into the admiral's cabin. And I shouldn't give this away, but the look inside several cabins was epic. And I was in the control room, and I had Don Stratton sitting next to me. And, I don't know who was shaking more, Don or myself, but, the ROV turns a corner, and this is in the television show, and there are Navy dress blue uniforms on hangers, and the white cap, officer's hat, up on the rack above the uniforms. I mean, it's just astonishing. And then you look over another direction, and there's a desk with all the drawers open and sort of hanging. And of course, everything about that room says, "Get out. Grab the important stuff. We are sinking." It's just astonishing. So that was sort of a first step, because the challenge is getting the equipment in there and then being able to get it out, because the ROV is tethered, and there's a million things for the tether to get hung up on. So Woods Hole, geniuses that they are, designed an ROV whose tether retracts. So as it comes back out, it spools the tether back up and spools it out as it goes. So anyway, it starts with the photography, call it reconnaissance. What's the lay of the land in here? Could we get sonar in here? Could we get the right camera and lighting in here to do photogrammetry, et cetera? So we hope it's coming. Yeah. Anything else? Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Another coin for your collection.
Thank you, sir.
Again, Pete,
It's so much to me. Thank you.
thank you so much, and to Carasoft, who funded your travel here and this amazing presentation for us today. This is really just astounding, and I think for all of us in the museum and history game, we would have loved to have been down there with you, but we can be today. So as a diver myself, I'm really excited about this and the other applications for this to learn more as we discover more Navy wrecks and learn more about our history. It's really so exciting. So thank you very much for all of your time. All right, let's see who won the lottery. Okay. Max Andrusek. All right. Step up. One of Annapolis's finest here. Thank you very much for coming. You're first. Ken Gandola. Is Ken here? Number 2. Commander Eddie Cause, you got the 3rd spot here. Come on up. Thomas Chang. And then We'll see with the staff if we want to queue people up after that. We've got a number of slots, so I won't read all the names here. We'll get the first people up, and I'll have my staff find the rest of you, and we'll get you in line for the virtual experience. I think you are not going to be disappointed by this. You can also look at the 3D print up in our Valor in the Pacific exhibit. And our education team also has what they call Sailor in a Box set up, some amazing artifacts of World War II that you can handle up close and personal. So thank you all so much for coming here today. I hope it's been a worthwhile experience for you to learn more about this pivotal event in our nation's history. Again, thank you, Admiral Cox, Admiral Walker, and Pete Kelsey.